The Mandalorians are among the most well-known groups in the entire Star Wars universe, notable for having had nearly as big of an impact on the galaxy as the Jedi or the Sith. But there are many that don't know the full story of these ferocious warriors, these mysterious armored beings whose combat skills had been renowned for millennia long before Jango and Boba Fett brought them into the realm of the movies. In this video, we'll be discussing the Mandalorians in full, and why they shouldn't be forgotten.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Thousands of years before the formation of the Republic, the surface of the planet that would later come to be known as Coruscant was mostly undeveloped. This planet, called Neutron by its inhabitants, was home to two species, 13 nations of humans known as the Battalions of Zel, and a species of reptilian humanoids called the Taung. The Taung were fierce warriors, and their clashes with the Zel were numerous. Eventually, there came a time when both species decided that there was only enough planet for one of them, and so war broke out. This war lasted for hundreds of years, and it did not go well for the Taungs, who were gravely outnumbered by their enemies. But the Taungs were not destined to be wiped out. One day, as they gathered for a final stand late in the war, there was a massive volcanic eruption which destroyed several of humanity's greatest cities, dealing a great blow to the Zel. The cloud of smoke and ash from the eruption blocked out the sun, and the Zel were disorientated and afraid. The Taungs, however, took the eruption as a sign from the gods that they were chosen for some greater destiny. Using the shadows from the cloud as cover, they attacked and utterly routed the battalions of Zel, dealing a second grievous blow to humanity. In honor of this victory, the Taungs began to call themselves Da Werda Verda, the Warriors of the Shadow. But their victory did not last, and after many more years of fighting, the Taungs were forced to flee Neutron entirely. Using primitive starship technology, they escaped genocide at mankind's hands, and for thousands of years, they wandered further and further into space. As the humans covered the surface of what would soon become Coruscant with a massive planetary city, the Taungs eventually made their way to a distant outer rim world called Rune. There, they advanced further, perfecting their starship technology and continuing to wander the stars until in 7000 BBY, a leader rose among them that changed their ways forever. This leader was named Mandalore, and he led the Taungs to a new world elsewhere in the Rim, a world dominated by colossal beasts called mythosaurs. Mandalore and his followers drove the mythosaurs to extinction despite their size and strength, leaving their corpses to rot over the course of 1,000 years. Mandalore became Mandalore I, and his name became a title passed down to the leaders of his people, who began calling themselves Mandalorians. The fearsome two-horned skulls of the mythosaurs became their symbol. They called their new home Mando Yame, but to the wider galaxy, it eventually came to be known simply as Mandalore. By the time of their colonization of Mandalore, the Mandalorians had come to believe in two gods, Khad Harangia, the god of change, and Arasum, the god of stagnation. To please the former and keep away from the clutches of the latter, the Mandalorians brought themselves into a perpetual state of war with their galactic neighbors. For the next 3,000 years, the Mandalorians would, invariably, always be engaged in some stage of warfare, either in preparation or execution. Their depredations, in effect, were crusades to them. Though the Mandalorians as a people had settled on Mandalore, their nomadic ways influenced their crusading, and it was not uncommon for Mandalorian leaders to adopt conquered worlds as temporary homes in this earlier stage. The most notable cultural mark of the Mandalorians was their armor, or Beskar, which, when literally translated, means iron skin. The early Mandalorians discovered Beskar, or Mandalorian iron, on their adopted homeworld pretty early on, and they used it to make the first of their iconic armor sets. Original Mandalorian combat gear was a far cry from the more modern variant used by the Fets, with the distinctive T-visor on their helmets being the only real common trait. Indeed, until the Mandalorian Wars, every Mandalorian's armor set was unique, with no real common standards. Over the course of 3,000 worlds, the Mandalorians carved out a swath of space for themselves, conquering many worlds for their own. Some native populations were wiped out, others were enslaved or welcomed into Mandalorian ranks alongside the Taungs. The Mandalorians looted their conquered worlds, and in more ways than one. They stole all of the technology they could find and adapted it for their own, always being sure to use the most powerful weaponry and equipment available. In such a manner, they acquired warships, blaster technology, and much more. In addition, the Mandalorians were even known to steal cultural habits, linguistic elements, or other such intangible things from those that they conquered, keeping themselves in a constant state of flux. In the decades leading up to 4000 BBY, Mandalore the Indomitable became the leader of his people, and it was he that brought the Mandalorian Crusades to the Republic. Previously, the Mandalorians had operated mostly outside of the Republic, and the Republic was content to ignore them. But Mandalore the Indomitable cut a bloody swath through the Republic, making it all the way to Basilisk in the core, a planet that he and his followers conquered. Though Basilisk was rendered dead in the battle, the Mandalorians claimed their most iconic weapons from it, the Basilisk war droids, fearsome machines that the Mandalorians began using as mounts. But not long after this breakthrough, the Mandalorians' Crusades came to an end. For the Mandalorian incursion into the Republic happened at the same time as another galactic scale development. In 3996 BBY, Ulic Qel-Droma and Exar Kun became Dark Lords of the Sith, sparking the new Sith War. As Kun swayed Jedi over to the dark side and rallied his Massassi warriors on Yavin 4, Qel-Droma sought out the Mandalorians, seeking reinforcements for his Krath armies. He met Mandalore the Indomitable in single combat and was victorious, and so the Mandalorian Crusaders joined the Brotherhood of the Sith. Together with the Krath, the Massassi, and Exar Kun's fallen Jedi, the Mandalorian Crusaders tore the Republic apart, cutting swaths through the Republic and battling on a galactic scale. The Mandalorians, together with the Krath, conquered the shipyards of Forost and launched an assault on Coruscant itself. But the Sith would not have the advantage for long. Later that year, the Mandalorians launched an attack on Onderon, but they were utterly defeated and forced to retreat to Zun in disarray. There, Mandalore the Indomitable was cut off from his troops and mauled by jungle beasts. Mandalore the Ultimate rose to take his place. We've already done a video on Mandalore the Ultimate and the Mandalorian Wars, and as we won't bother restating its contents here, if you haven't watched it already, we suggest that you do so. The Mandalorian Wars saw the Mandalorians transformed from a nomadic band of Taung warriors to a multi-species galactic-scale military power. The Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders brought the Republic to its knees, but they were driven back by Revan and Malak, and after a terrible battle on Malachor 5, they were defeated. Revan forced them to dismantle their war droids and their fleets, and then he took Mandalore's mask, driving the Mandalorian clans into civil war. Under Mandalore the Preserver, who the redeemed Revan gave the mask to in the aftermath of the Jedi Civil War, the Mandalorians reunited, but they were never able to return to their former glory. It was after the Mandalorian Wars that Mandalorian mercenaries first began appearing, and they would only grow in number as the years went on, selling their formidable combat skills to the highest bidder. Mandalorians were involved in some way in all of the old Sith Wars until their end to some degree, usually siding with the Sith, but occasionally supporting the Republic as well, but never in major roles. During the new Sith Wars, this dynamic actually flipped. All recorded Mandalorian actions in that millennium-long conflict were on the side of the Jedi and the Republic against the Sith. The Mandalorians declined even further after the Ruusan reformations brought an era of peace to the Republic. In 738 BBY, the Republic Judicial Forces launched a brutal preemptive strike against Mandalorian space when the Mandalorians began to militarize again, reducing swaths of whole Mandalorian worlds to deserts of white sand. It was at this point that a new Mandalorian faction seized power over the sector, a faction dedicated to pacifism and renunciation of the old ways. Those that stuck to the old ways were further crippled by the Mandalorian Civil War of 60 BBY, fought between Jaster Mareel's true Mandalorians and Tor Fistler's Death Watch. The true Mandalorians won, though Mareel died in the process, and Jango Fett became their new leader. His reign was short-lived, however. The Death Watch got their revenge at the Battle of Galadran, where they manipulated the Jedi Order into wiping out the true Mandalorians, leaving only Fett alive. As we all know, Jango Fett became a bounty hunter after the deaths of his fellow warriors, and that career led him to be selected by Darth Tyrannus as the clone template for the Grand Army of the Republic. Fett wasn't the only Mandalorian involved in the project either. To help train the clones, he recruited 100 Mandalorians of various walks of life. These men and women came to be known as the Kulvadar, and they turned the Kaminoans' clone army into a fighting force worthy of Mandalore. Mandalorian culture had a significant influence on the clones, especially the clone commandos, who adopted Mandalorian clan culture into their squads, learned traditional war songs, and even took Mando'a as a second language. Mandalorian tactics influenced the standard battle plans laid out by the Kaminoans, and Mandalorian armor served as the base inspiration for Phase 1 clone armor. Mandalorian influence over the Grand Army of the Republic was so extensive that there are those that say that there were actually two sets of Mandalorian Wars. One that saw an army of Mandalorians attack the Republic, and another that saw an army of Mandalorians defend the Republic from the CIS. So that's why it's important to remember the Mandalorians. Their history, their culture, and their legacy isn't just a cool piece of the expanded universe lore, it shaped the entire galaxy. The Clone Wars and the Grand Army of the Republic in particular were closely tied to that legacy. Even though with Jango Fett's death, the true Mandalorians were no more, they remained a very relevant force in the galaxy. So what do you guys think? Do you want to hear some more videos on Mandalorian history? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out all those links in the description. And I just want to say, our Roblox is back up and running on our Geetsly's gaming network, and we are currently looking for some talented developers to join the team. So if you're interested, make sure you send me a message on Discord. And also, if you're into history, we do have this second history channel that has been popping off recently. We're doing videos there weekly, although we've had some monetization issues. So make sure you check that out as well. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.